Dylan Moran.
Hello. I'm supposed to do jokes and stuff, but I don't really like jokes, you know, because people come out here and they go, 5 nuns go into a fishmonger's, and I just think, no, they didn't. The nuns stayed at home, and the fishmonger stayed in the fish shop. That's the way life is. They probably didn't have any relationship of any kind, you know. They probably didn't even write to one another. Or if they did, it would have been a very short correspondence, you know. Dear fishmonger, we are nuns. See ya.
Okay, I don't expect everyone to get Dylan Moran. Much like many alternative comics, his style is a very acquired taste given the subjective nature of comedy. But when you actually stop taking in every word he says and look at his performance as a whole, it reminds you of that drunken friend in the corner of a pub, babbling on, unconsciously breaking apart everything you say. In this bit from his set 20 years ago, Moran breaks down the issue with traditional joke-telling. It's not the best example of his work, but it manifests his style that has progressed over the years. Dylan Moran plays up the idea that he's a bumbling character who doesn't have the faintest clue what he's doing or even what he's saying. Whereas a comedian like Stuart Lee, for example, can take the same bit and give us a very comedic analysis of comedy, Dylan Moran has no postmodern intention. In fact, he's not trying to be clever, he's acting ineffectual and quite pointlessly. He doesn't desire to have a purpose.
You should stay away from your potential. I mean, that is something you should leave absolutely alone. You'll mess it up. It's potential, leave it.
Moran isn't a deconstructionist, but his seemingly inadvertent creativity is deliberate. He's not attempting to engage us with stimulating thoughts, he's just being funny by presenting himself as a reflection of our own inner bitterness that we're reluctant to admit. Moran states his ignorance is a tool to shape his ideas, and like many of us, he's defined by his prejudices and cynicism.
You know, you define who you are by who it is that you hate up the road.
Why do we do that, you think? Why do we enjoy doing that so much?
I suppose there's a childish element to it, which is fun. You know, it's really no different to one child saying to another, your mum and dad smell of weed, and your granny is a whore. There's no difference. People do that all over the world, you know?
He's just as ordinary and boring as the rest of us, and as an observational comic, we can relate to his querulous and stubborn attitude. Moran sees his act as emotional rather than intellectual, favouring poking fun at new neurotic pain, which is basically his way of describing our irrelevant first world problems, such as...
Where's the cake? Cake is the language of love. I don't see any cakes in the building. You know, people say that to you in your life, you go, I love you. Yeah? Give me a fucking eclair.
In reality, Moran describes himself more as a conversationalist rather than reciting a monologue, because physicality and the audience's reactions and responses retain the back and forth nature of his rhetorical dialogue. His style originates from the oral expression that defined much of traditional Irish culture. Much like Scotland, Ireland is famous for its cultivation of storytelling, especially in regards to poetry and folklore. Despite the existence of print and manuscripts, many Irish fairy tales, romanticism, myths, and legends were generally passed on orally from one generation to the next, hence the prolific image of the Irish reconnaisseur surrounded by fascinated listeners in a pub or around a fireside. In early Irish tradition, storytelling was primarily designated to the likes of the Shenanigans, storytellers who crafted their narratives and put on a performance using dramatic speech and gestures for entertainment purposes for their noblemen, before the Battle of Kinsale in 1601-1602 saw the collapse of Gaelic aristocracy, thus reducing the role of historians and storytellers. Dylan Moran embodies the amalgamation of this Irish artistic expression. He is a contemporary approach to the Shenanigans.
Now, I meant to talk about something else earlier on, and I forgot what it was. I've remembered what it is again, but I've also forgotten. And that's really what adulthood is like most of the time.
As Moran explains, People were talking. Talk was the mental fire you would gather around in the evening. As a Northern Irish native, I can empathise with the fact that you can never escape Irish humour. It occupied a big part of your existence. It's not about sitting in front of a television, it's about what's happening in the room. Sometimes it's not storytelling so much as just banter or bullshit, you know? This is the basis of Moran's act. He's delivering his material like a stream of consciousness, as if he's searching for an idea or image to best describe his babbling thoughts, occasionally accompanied by crude drawings to visualize his thinking process. He's spewing out the kind of nonsense that your drunken grandfather might start telling you after your Christmas dinner, but it's the kind of nonsense that works with Moran's nonchalant persona, which is in fact his real identity.
What are they really? Children. Midget drunks. That's what they are. You know, they are people who greet you in the morning by kneeing you in the face.
He claims much of his style is less comedically influenced and more so by literary writers, including Irish avant-garde writer Samuel Beckett and Serbian-American poet Charles Simic. And just listening to his words, you can see how he dabbles in linguistic poeticism.
No, I'm talking about all this, obviously. I'm talking about children and all that kind of, and jobs, mentioning these things to pretend to you that I have an ordinary life. And this is because I'm relating to you, and you're ordinary people, looking up at me with a mixture of awe, envy, and lust. And the thing is...
Moran is a highly intelligent man, stubbornly refusing to admit his own intelligence. His career has had a life cycle of its own, with his constant theme of aging. His act has had the reverse effect of many comedians. As he's gotten older, his set has gradually become brighter and more optimistic, whilst retaining his natural cynicism. The way Moran uses language and vocabulary is unique. He speaks with sophistication before delving into a crudely delivered punchline to bring his grand gestures down to earth. Despite his appearance and delivery, he's strangely elegant, jumping between visual surrealism and mundane observation to keep the audience on his side. He invites us into his creative and insightful pondering, and as he begins to deliver an expressively rich narrative filled with colourful anecdotes, we're aggressively jolted with a reminder that he's just as whiny as the rest of us.
You're standing opposite that person, and there is a moment where you realise you're not looking at an expression of fleeting lust or some sort of passing of the time, in the surrounding befuddlement, where you're actually, know each other, you want to be together, and you realise it, and it's an amazing moment when the other person's actually taking their clothes off in front of you, smiling from the very middle of themselves at you, saying, I want to be with you, and you looking at them with their bare shoulders all shimmering in this roseate candlelight, and you realise this is the person for you. And then the cage comes down!
There is a cryptic bitterness to the way Moran presents his material. He gives us vivid stories and then infuses them with the realization that he can't be happy about everything. But there's an expressive honesty to his persona. None of us like to be reminded that life is cruel, harsh, and unfair. But the way Dylan Moran describes it is that it's not necessarily a bad thing once you accept it. Moran is a manifestation of our inner cynicism, our judgmental and prejudicial nature that we so desperately try to mask. But Moran sees past this, and calls us out on our attempts at pretension, because no matter how clever you think you are, sometimes we all fall victim to our own self-indulgence. In his early sitcom Black Books, his exaggerated performance as Barnett Black works in synergy with Bill Bailey's more bubbly and happy-go-lucky Manny, with Tamsin Gregg's Fran completing the puzzle in a show that isn't about the meaninglessness of existence, more than it is a celebration of what makes our meaninglessness so special. The fact that we can rejoice in our own futility with our dearest friends despite our constant quarrels and judgments of each other is a massive truth to our own human thoughts and emotions. Sometimes embracing and indulging on life for what it is better than simply wishing for what we want it to be. You shouldn't always try to make sense of his ideas, because in his eyes, life is this constant mystique that we can't make sense of, nor should we, because that's the beauty of it all. Despite our attempts to embed reason onto everything and the pretensions and hypocrisy that comes with it, Dylan Moran's right. We should just be happy that this is what it is. Hi everyone, thanks for watching. As a big fan of comedy, I always feel that the writing and performance elements of comedy are highly undervalued, and I always think it's worth exploring, so if you enjoyed this video, we might give it another shot. Who knows what happens. My next video is going to be on It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, looking at Dennis Reynolds, the erotic serial killer to be precise. But until next time, if you enjoyed this video and you want to help me to keep making this kind of content, please do consider pledging directly to the channel on Patreon. It's completely free will, but every dollar, every cent, everything that comes through is what helps me to keep the lights on here. Until next time, stay safe, and I'll see you all very soon.